Welcome to the Grid Podcast, episode 22. Our goal is to educate and to bring hard-hitting truths about America's critical infrastructure. I'm your host, Maria Sumn. A quick disclaimer, political opinions expressed in the podcast by participants are their opinion and not necessarily that of the Grid Podcast. Please subscribe and like and turn on the notification bell so you can be notified when we go live. This helps promote the channel on YouTube. So today, its topic is part 2 of AI, the grid, and critical infrastructure. And we welcome back George Condos. George, it's a pleasure to have you back on the podcast. How are you today? How you doing?
Still kicking.
Still kicking. Well, let me give you a little refresher on George's background. He served in the U.S. military, the 82nd Airborne. He was in military intelligence. And I'm just touching on his background is so amazing. He was a consultant to senior management for telecom system development, security, and systems monitoring. He also was a systems analyst and designed multiple companies and was a consultant to the FBI. He helped lead the security and systems monitoring of major proposal for NORAD and U.S. Space Command, working with Lockheed Martin. He's a network and telco architect, special technology, including AI and large data processing, natural language processing, and are you still a professor in computer science? And he's got a master's and doctorate.
No,
Not anymore. So, did
no,
I
I
miss
got
anything you want to tell our audience about? Welcome.
I was a professor of computer science for a short time, and I a lot of college nowadays has been dumbed down pretty much, and I didn't like that. I proposed some classes, and I got the feeling they thought they were too tough for their students, and they shouldn't have been. They were just basic classes. But so I think that we really have a way to go in this is my own opinion here. In education, we
Yep.
don't make it tough enough. And I always found that when you made it a little bit tougher for the students, just tough enough to stretch them, they did better. They actually put in the effort.
Yep.
But a lot of students now want the piece of paper because the piece of paper gets them in the door in a job.
That's
And
that's basically where they're at. They have to get that piece of paper, right?
yeah, that's so the goal is piece of paper rather than really learning in depth.
Right.
And, and so, but I had other things to do, so I said, "Nah, I don't want to do this anymore," and went off to do something else. I had a friend of mine. We were working on stuff. He worked very heavily on 5G and things like 4G and 5G. He worked with AT&T. He had patents with them. So him and I, we'd worked together for many, many years. So we did a lot of things together in the last years of his life. But COVID really messed him up, and he died last year.
Oh,
But
no.
he was a good guy, a very brilliant engineer, and also a mountain man. He would go off into the wilderness. We'd go into the wilderness for 47 years. We knew each other. So the survival thing is in there too. So for all the grid people, if the grid goes down, some people still do know how to survive.
Yeah.
So, but AI and the grid, and this is a tough one because there's so much going on.
Yep.
I cannot keep up with the papers, and there's some great papers out there. I'm not doing slides, but what I will do is I will send Maria a little sort of a bibliography, with links for some of the better papers that I've seen that cover this. I mean, some of these are long papers, very detailed, and but there's so much information in these. All I can do is barely touch on things, and a lot of information this is a developing area, and so you see a lot of stuff that may be a bit contradictory because there's people saying, "Oh, AI is going to be a boon to everything in the world," and then you say, "Oh God, look at how much power we're going to need for these data centers and for the large language model processing and stuff. So we can talk about that today somewhat, the pros and cons, and some of the things that we really have to think about before getting involved too deep into AI. And and to start off, last time I covered, what's intelligence and all that. If you go and you try to look up human intelligence, you get a lot of different things. Humans really have a whole plethora of different levels of intelligence. We have people, I taught a man who could not multiply two numbers. He literally couldn't. He couldn't grasp that concept of doing 5 times 2, for example. Yet he could take apart a car and fix anything in it. So I got him into a program for mechanics, and he went off and got a great job. But we have specific intelligence. We have people who are brilliant in music, people who are brilliant in mathematics and electronics and stuff. We have Albert Einstein, who couldn't drive a car, but he could look at the things he could do. So when you talk about human intelligence, which we're trying to emulate with AI, we have a broad range of intelligence. And all of a sudden, we're going to have a computer that right now we're just dealing with narrow AI, just specific areas that we can really link into and concentrate on. We don't have a lot of context in AI. Chips are getting better, and the way we do things are getting better. Humans have context back. I'm 76 years old just about this year, and I can remember things that I did when I was 4 or 5 years old. Humans have that level of context because that creates what we are. And with AI, we don't have that depth of context. We can have some when we do natural language processing because you need a little bit. You have to look at different words in a sentence to figure out, how they should be used or what they mean. But we don't have the level of context yet in AI that humans just take for granted.
Now, do you think AI could ever get there? I mean, that's what makes humans unique.
Theoretical super AI, which they're talking about it acting like a human and everything, I think that is truly a long way off. And the problem, we can get into some of the issues. One of the problems we're going to have is when a human does something, when a human makes a decision, they're looking at all of the things that they've done in their life, anything that might affect this. You want to go off and make it. I was a soldier. I had a squad under me. I had to make a decision. Are we going to do this or this? If I made a mistake, those guys could be killed. So I had an ethical responsibility to think things through a bit and maybe make a decision that wasn't the optimal decision for the mission at the time, which was generally our cue was to get the mission done. But I didn't want to get the guys hurt if I didn't have to. A computer using AI, they're having problems with it already, with the computer having a different idea of what's optimal than what a human would. And that different idea may endanger humans. It may not be good for humans. So the super AI, that they dream about getting to, I don't know if that would even be good, because they don't have they don't have a section of their brains for empathy and thinking about how it affects other things and that depth. And I don't see that ever happening in the near future, at least. We'd have to have a different kind of computer, a computer that was more like a brain, really, to do that. And to talk about some of the problems with that later. But as we go through and we look at artificial intelligence, what we're generally dealing with now is narrow AI. Specific AI aimed at solving a specific problem. Maybe it's summarizing a article. Maybe it's like ChatGPT can do. Boy, it could do some of that stuff really good. It can draw pictures. You ever see the generated pictures? Though they tend to have mistakes in them. If you really look close, you'll start to see these
I,
odd little mistakes.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of
And
it sometimes has to do with angles, even in digits, a person's,
yeah,
it'll miss a digit on one hand.
they'll miss something. Yeah, something crazy like that. And beautiful stuff. I mean, you can find great pictures at a level that you would never expect from a machine, but not quite there yet. One thing to remember about AI is it is not absolutely deterministic. When you get an answer from an AI system, it isn't this is it, like solving a math problem. I've got it. This is the answer. It's probabilistic. They're trained up to a certain point. When you train a neural network, for example, which we do when we want to put stuff in a category, or we want to look at something from the perspective of what is some average thing that we should be doing, or what is looking for the right word here. How do we actually what do we want in the way of an answer? I guess you can have answers that are yes, no, put it in this category, or you can have an answer that is actually 90% of the time I'm going to be right in taking this turn, or that thing that I'm looking at is a person walking in front of my car. Okay. Um, you notice they have mistakes every once in a while. And AI, there's also something with AI called hallucinations, and they're actually giving you absolutely wrong answers, but acting like they're giving you a correct answer. And think about that now with the grid. If we're using an AI program and we want that AI program to control the grid, and something happens in the grid, especially something that AI program has never seen before anywhere in its training, it's going to say, here's the probability that I do this. Bing. And if that probability is 50% and it guesses wrong, and your power goes down for an entire city, well, that maybe AI wasn't the best solution for that problem. That's the type of thing we have to deal with as we go forward. At what point and in what areas should we use AI? So when I started looking at it from a grid perspective, I was surprised that they had been looking at monitoring of the grid using AI, using some variants of AI. Never found a good explanation of which ones or which approaches. Oh, yeah, we have used AI for monitoring. Okay. Well, AI is real good at taking a lot of data and processing it. Not necessarily always accurately,
Hmm.
but it can process a lot of data. And so it makes sense. I can monitor something and I can train an AI system to look for certain patterns and tell me when something's wrong.
Right.
It's not seeing the pattern it should see, or it's going out of bounds. It's processing all different points that it would be very hard for a human alone to be able to look at and do a synopsis of and come up with, oh, here's a problem right here. AI can do that very well, especially if it has good structured data. And by reading what I did on how they were using this in the past, I took it that they were kind of edging into AI and doing monitoring based on some pretty good data. And that makes a lot of sense. That's something that we can really use AI for, and it can enhance the human's ability. But also, as I read the articles and as it went forward, even an MIT article that I read about the future of
Mhm.
AI in the grid, what happened is they say, do we want AI to make immediate decisions that would affect the power in the grid?
Yep.
And generally, they said, we really want a human in the loop because AI can't consider everything if it hasn't been trained properly and always be correct. Humans can't either, but human experience, and there's a very good article. I'll put a whole list of these articles. I'll even do a little synopsis. This one covers this good or that good.
Mhm.
And I'll send it to you, Maria, so you can post it and anybody can come and grab it. But think about we start to have an outage and AI says, I'm going to shut down this area and this area and this area because that's the most efficient thing to do based on the training and based on the algorithm used. But one of the areas that shuts down is a hospital. Okay.
Right.
And, or it shuts down the uh, water purification plant for your area, right? Uh, Not so good. Humans can balance those things out. They made a point that the people working on these systems often have worked on the systems 20, 30 years. They have lots of experience. They've seen it all.
Mhm.
And they don't just react, they react somewhat ethically. They
Right.
react considering a lot of variables that you may not even think of when training AI. There's so much going on with AI, and there's so many gotchas, and there's so many uh, unknowns right now. Uh, Very good article, and I will send this as a link. It's a real good article. It's like 60 something pages long, and it goes in depth to goes written originally with a lot of European information, but so it talks a bit about AI and how much energy it's going to use and how much AI can save us by balancing things properly because uh, AI can take and process a lot of data and it can say, here I can see this. It can even be used if we think about this. I want to do planning for a new extension to a power plant or a new power plant.
Mhm.
Well, AI can not only look at all the information for planning that it has before, nice structured information in many cases, but also it can look at weather patterns and how they've affected the plants over the
Mhm.
years. It can look at, uh, what if these changes are made that humans may just shove some of that aside because the processing of that data might be too hard for humans, but AI can process that data.
Right.
So planning is one area. Monitoring, they've started to use AI and they've been using it for a while. A lot of new advances in AI with neural networks have actually been within the last 15 years. And they've actually been looking at AI for monitoring of the grid and electrical systems for about 25 years or more. So a lot of stuff, all of a sudden, these new techniques are coming in, may make it even more applicable, may make it better for going in and using AI for planning for plants, for planning on if you're making new connections to your plant. Like we're talking about these operation centers. Large language model processing is what they're talking about usually when you see these centers that are going to draw these massive amounts of power.
Mhm. Yep.
And the thing is, uh, in some cases, we may be looking at changes and fluctuations in power at those plants based on how they're used.
Right.
you know and I did not realize the power fluctuations could be a lot. The power demand in large language processing centers could really be dramatically change over time.
Mhm.
And That's not the norm. They've planned that all out already for regular transmission power for cities and things. They have data over a lot of years. And if the fluctuations that are something that they put in place controls for, and then all of a sudden they were to plug in this need for all these data centers, like they have in Northern Virginia, for example, which is data center central, apparently. Uh, how does that really affect the power fluctuations for the community as a whole? How does that affect what rates you charge? Because you charge different rates based on
Right.
the demand. How is that going to affect that? So when you're talking about AI for the grid, this double-edged sword. AI might tell us ways to plan better, to monitor better. It might eventually give us the ability to have automated controls, but do we really want that? Do we want to be an AI system to make a mistake and shut down something important? Probably want a human in the loop for that. We probably don't want this. I'm going to just let AI control everything, and if it sees something, it's going to do all my changes for me. So, double-edged sword.
Exactly.
AI as a way to plan better, monitor better, save money maybe in the way we do things, but then the power draw for
Mm.
AI for all these setters and everything is is really it's look at the range of power they're saying for increases. 2 times, 4 times, 6 times, 8 times. You look at different articles and they say, oh, it's going to increase by 50% or 100%. And other articles say, well, we don't really know for sure how much we're up in the air. And
Right.
that's problematic. I think we have to step back a little bit and sit down. There's a whole set of uh, things that AI can be used for and different types of AI.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't get it. You go on TV and they say, we have this AI powered this. Okay, what kind of AI are you using?
That's the thing. People don't know that there's different kinds of AI, right? That, so,
And they vary in.
hmm
You're going to vary in how you have to collect data for it, how good the data has to be for it, because in some cases the data has to be really pretty good or you are going to get something you're not expecting. How much training has to be done? The
yep,
amount of power needed to train some of these systems before they're ever put out in use to help somebody is phenomenal in some
yeah,
cases. And the cost is in the hundreds of millions of dollars to train some of these systems. And people do not realize it's a cost.
yep,
We talk about protecting the grid, and we talk about spending a few cents per customer extra to protect the grid, and they don't seem to want to do that. Yet now we're talking about implementing AI, which could have massive costs to the grid
yeah,
and cause massive fluctuations if not planned for properly. And then one of the things they bring up in the one article that I'll give you a link for, that a lot of it is European. And what are they doing in Europe? They want they worry about the climate change a lot.
hmm
Uh, so if they're worrying about climate change, then all of a sudden, how much when you're talking about the extra power you need for the grid, can that be clean power? And some of the articles
question.
even say are
hmm
the backups are diesel generators in some cases. Well, that blows the carbon thing out of the water, doesn't it?
Right, right,
So that has to be taken into consideration. When we do this, how are we going to power these big centers that AI depends on for all of the processing and the training and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And how are we going to then uh, justify what we're doing with all different things pulling at us? The cost for the consumers, its impact on the carbon emissions. How does solar and wind come into play with AI? Because when AI has these fluctuations that it goes through in processing and needs to draw more power, how does that affect the wind and solar if it's nighttime and there's no wind? uh, Now the other side of the coin is they are working on using AI to properly integrate
Mm-hmm.
these, solar and wind power and the like, and these small nuclear reactors to handle the mathematics, the calculations that are going to be required to incorporate all of these systems and interconnect them and keep the grid stable. That is one of the wins for AI because that's where if you get good data and you process it properly, you can really get a good idea of what's going to happen. You can model how the fluctuations can be handled.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to be a learning curve, and there's going to be times when you can't just push AI out there. I saw on TV this morning, as a matter of fact, they were talking about home sale, $50 million home sale, and AI almost blew it because of a mistake. Uh,
Yep.
so uh, if it's a major power plant or major power center that's providing power to New York City and there's a mistake, well, that's not a minor thing.
No, it's not. It's not.
And so when we talk about AI and the grid, we have to look at the balance. We have
Yep.
to look at all the possible positives. We have to look at uh, the power consumption. We have to look at how they're going to do that, how they're going to plan for that,
Mm-hmm.
how they're going to charge for that, and how they're going to finance it. Because this is a new area, and these things are all financed.
Right.
And people don't even think about that. I'm a big financial institution that's going to finance what you're doing, but you're doing something brand new. You don't know how much power you're going to need 5 years from now. You don't know how well this AI is really going to progress
Mm-hmm.
because we could be getting up to super AI in 5 years because some genius comes up with a new way to do it. Uh, and we could say, oh, we're going to finance you for these centers. We're going to finance you for the AI. We're going to finance you for all the training the AI has to get, possibly hundreds of millions of dollars. And all of a sudden, technology changes. Technology goes from when I was building uh, systems for a medical place, and we went from individual transistors to medium scale integration to large scale integration chips
Mm-hmm.
within a few years. All of a sudden, this device we had that drew a large amount of power, actually, uh, you know, uh, many thousands of watts of power for this one device, and all of a sudden, the technology changed, and we drew 1/10 of the power. The
Yep.
displays in medical equipment used to be like Nixie tubes with 270 volts and a lot of current going through the things to light up the tubes.
Yep.
And within a real short period of time, they had LEDs drawing a tiny fraction of the power. What's going to happen with AI? We're building these big centers. And remember, people are paying for this. And if we talk about the grid, The grid, when we build something new with the grid, it's not a 5 month project or a 6 month
Mhm.
project. It's something we plan for years. And they have to plan ahead and they have to get the funding for it. Remember, funding is going to be a big part of this.
Yep.
And so, okay, based on what we have now, our funding is $5 billion, whatever, something ridiculous. Based on the technology changes in 2 years, and it's one fifth that. How do you handle the funding where you started off on that track and you've started spending all this money and you've started putting all the systems in place for cooling because that comes into play too, and water requirements, and all of a sudden you need 1/10 the cooling, and the technology's changed to the point where you don't need something the size of 4 football fields. All of a sudden, you know, one football field will do it. How do you handle that? I saw the changes in the computer industry from late 1970s up through the 1990s. How many companies went out of business? Do you remember Honeywell computers, Wang
Yeah.
computers, Data General computers, DEC computers? No, they went out of business. Now that PC on your desk has a lot more power than the room full of computers that we had in the early 1980s when I was putting together a center for a digital equipment corporation. So all of these things really have to be taken into account, and I don't think people are really doing that. It's very easy to start sucking on the AI lollipop and not realize that the center may be kind of bitter. Okay, uh, it because
Yep.
we don't know how the technology is really going to go. We think we do, but I don't think anybody really does. When you go through all the articles on uh, AI in the grid or AI period, it's a lot of unknowns, a lot of guessing, a lot of, yeah, this could help us. Uh,
Right.
you already see some of the changes. Just watch the TV. 6 months ago, they had an AI advertisement, and uh, and it was aimed at people going to school, to college and stuff.
Hmm.
We have this AI program, and it can go through and uh, go through your papers and give you a synopsis of them. Basically, we used to have to go through and outline our papers. You're a professor that made you do
Yeah.
that. Go through and outline the book. Well, the idea was A, to make you actually read it, and
Exactly.
B, and B, to because when you write something down, another thing that's missing in what we're doing, your brain registers things differently when you use a pen and paper than when you sit there and type with a computer.
Right.
And our brains developed with people drawing pictures on cave walls and uh, 8, 10,000 years ago using making scratches in clay, but it was hand brain. Now you sit there with a keyboard, it's not the same. It doesn't register the same in the brain. You should look at scans of it. I studied neuroscience. I was really going to go into neuroscience. I took a job in the medical thing because we were doing stuff for monitor for the brain. So I got to play with some of that. But I see my grandchildren and the way they process data when they're sitting in front of a computer and the way they process data if they open up a book. I have one that went from always being on the computer to reading books now. And his personality has actually changed.
That's
The
because
way he thinks about
he's
things has
using
changed.
his imagination now.
Yeah,
When
he's
you read a
using it,
book.
he's getting more
Mhm.
interested in things in
Yep.
a different way.
Yep.
Okay. His brother, who is his twin brother, still is on the computer. Both smart, but one is developing in a different way. And it's interesting to see that. Uh, and the other gotcha with AI is if we let AI do everything for us, do we end up in Wally World? Okay, if everybody's seen that with everybody floating around in they become big lumps
Yep.
on a floating couch, and they're not expected to do anything or think or anything else. Because if you teach in a college for a little bit now, I taught years ago, and then I taught just many years ago, like 35 years ago, and then I taught 5 years ago, 5, 8, 10 years ago, actually, I quit, and it was totally different. The students had a different set of objectives. Their world was different. What they wanted was different. What they thought was different, and how they studied was different. It was an interesting contrast. And how much, if we let AI go too far, what do we lose? Are we going to let AI take over the absolute control of a grid?
That's a good
Number
question.
one, in an MIT thing I was reading, we're talking about the future of AI in the grid, and they said probably we should consider having a human in that loop.
That is my
Okay.
recommendation, my
Yeah.
number one recommendation.
Uh, and you were talking to me earlier about, what does AI do? Well, look at the experiments they've been doing. I'll try to grab this one article that I was reading too, because they did an experiment with a lot of the tools that are out there now. What is it? ChatGPT, and what's the other one? Grok, and
Open AI.
Claude, a few others.
Yeah.
And they actually did this whole series of experiments, and they even changed the instructions they were giving to the AI about the way they trained it and everything. And they still found that AI would do things that they didn't expect. And in some cases, those things were dangerous to humans. And that AI, in another article, and this one probably people have heard about, where they went in and they purposely put information out that was being monitored by AI. Remember one thing about the data that AI gets, because people forget this too. There is structured data, and that's our IRS tax form. We have a line for each specific thing, and we know what's supposed to be on that line in that form. And then we have the emails we send back and forth, and all the other stuff going on. And there's information in there, but there's people that misspell things, and there's slang words, and there's answers to an email that might have been sent 2 weeks earlier that the AI might not have the context for. And if the AI is taking all of this stuff in and trying to process it to make a decision, does it get good data to make a decision? How clean do we have to make that data? Okay, because a lot of the types of AI that you can use for this, including uh, machine learning, and which is a big category that has other things under it, but it requires fairly structured data to give you really what you want, what you're expecting from the AI. But one of the experiments was a company, and they sent these messages around that implicated that the AI was going to be shut down. And it was a while that I read this, so I may get a little bit off, but somebody listening might have the whole story. And then they sent some other information around that was negative towards some of the managers. And the AI actually started threatening people that it would release this information if they tried to shut them down. Just out of boom. Wasn't trained to do that or anything else. They found a lot of things like that. Like 30% of the time, AI would make decisions that could be dangerous to humans in one set of experiments they did. And it varied depending on the particular AI tool they were using, from 35% to like 80, 90%, that the AI would be capable of making decisions that could hurt humans. Something like HAL in The old,
Yeah,
what,
the Space
2001 or
Odyssey.
whatever it
Yeah,
was, Space Odyssey?
2001 Space Odyssey. Yeah, where Hal decided that
Yeah.
he was in
Yeah.
control. Hmm.
Think about what we're trying to do with super AI. Make something like humans. But 1% of the population of humans are psychotics. Okay? They're born like that. There's parts of the brain that aren't working properly.
Yep.
And then another fairly good percentage are sociopaths, which is because of things that happen to them. Things
Mm.
can happen to AI in the training. We have to remember that. And AI can be attacked by purposely injecting bad information into the training. And the
Yep.
Russians have done that in
Hmm.
trying to attack systems. They have purposely injected something into an AI system, and it takes a small percentage of the data that the AI is processing
Yep.
to make the AI do things that are not expected or not wanted.
I believe Elon
Okay.
Musk said that. He actually did. He said it's going to be only as good as its programming, right? So, and he mentioned something about a psychopath getting a hold of it. I'll have to find the clip on that. But yeah, so what
Well,
happened there?
you can go online if you do a search right now with a lot of search engines. You have the option there of looking at the little synopsis.
Right.
If you And so what I did is not to keep politics out of this. I'll just say a politician gave a talk, and so I started looking at the different synopsis things that came out from that were put up on different searches I did, and you wouldn't know from the synopsis the things that the guy actually said.
Yep.
It was like they would take certain parts and emphasize that and miss all of the context around it. And that's a problem with doing a synopsis. Anybody remember Reader's Digest? You know what Reader's Digest was?
Yep.
People in the 1950s were working a lot, and they didn't have time to read the latest novel that came out or the latest things. So you had Reader's Digest, which gave a synopsis of it. Now I tell you, reading a synopsis was nothing like reading a really good book. Okay, reading a synopsis of, let's just say, A Christmas Carol is not the same as reading the book. Okay, uh, and you miss a lot if you just do a synopsis. So somebody in like the 1960s wrote a short story saying, "Well, we have this Reader's Digest, this book, and it's a synopsis of what's a lot of the important things for the last month or so, because it would come out monthly, I believe. And well, do we have time to read the Reader's Digest? So let's do this. Let's do a synopsis of the synopsis. And let's do a synopsis of the
Yeah.
synopsis of the synopsis. And the end part of this little short story was we can have one word that will be a synopsis of everything that happened in the month, and all you have to do is read that word, and that's it.
And
Now, of
then,
course, you've got there's no context, there's no real depth. That's a danger of AI too,
yep.
because if we let AI do our thinking for us in certain cases, a one MIT study has already shown that our IQs are already decreasing with people that are using some of these tools a lot.
Right. Right.
And B, what do we miss? You
Yep.
know?
I found that quote by Elon Musk, and he was on Joe Rogan, and this is exactly what he said. If AI gets programmed by an extinctionist, its
Yeah.
utility function will be the extinction of humanity. So then he goes on, he says, I am worried about the AI stuff. It needs some regulatory authority to make sure it is operating in the public's best interests, quote unquote.
but it needs a regulatory authority that understands it. Okay,
Yep,
what
that's
you
the
tend
problem.
to have, and this is something too that's going to come into play for the grid because the government's going to have to get involved in it.
Yep.
We don't really like that, but it's just going to have to. There are too many variables. There's too much money. There's too much that could happen if AI is used incorrectly or programmed
Mhm.
incorrectly, trained incorrectly. If who's writing the algorithms for the AI? Who's writing most of the algorithms for the AI? 20 somethings?
Yeah, I
Okay.
and itself
Now, do you
actually.
think I've written a lot of programs? Okay. I've actually
So far.
programmed in a dozen different languages,
Mhm.
okay, for different projects over the years, including Ada a little bit, which I hated.
I did a lot of
But
Ada.
I, I did not like, I wasn't really
Ada
good
was
at that, but
Ada was an interesting
I
language.
had to do it for something
That.
I was working on. I was glad that the guy with me really knew it well. But, uh, but what happens when, what would happen if tomorrow uh, only people 30 and below could control the country? Okay. What would happen if there was actually a movie made mid 1960s, um, and it had this whole story about this young guy who came up and he became a leader and he started, well, we've got to let younger people vote. So one of the things in the movie, they actually had songs in the movie, 14 or fight. You're going to be, you can vote when you're 14 years old. Now the prefrontal cortex doesn't really fully develop until you're well into your 20s.
Right.
Okay. But he pushed that, and by pushing that, he got enough people to vote for him. He became president in his 20s, in his late 20s. And well, all these old people are they're hurting us. We got to essentially put them in concentration. We got to get rid of them.
Hmm.
So that's what he started doing. And at the end of the movie, he turned 30, and his big thing was nobody under 30. They have to get rid of him. Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's
That's
from
like a
remembering something I saw 50 years ago.
yeah.
So,
There
but
was a band who was the who the lead singer had a song that said, "I hope I die before I get old." But now I think he's like 75 or 80 years old.
yeah, not in a hurry
So
to die,
be
is he?
careful what you say.
But think of who's writing the AI algorithms, and
Yep.
think of some of the things we've seen. Think of what happens when you use a search engine that search engine decides what's going to be on the first one or two pages of your searches because people don't go much beyond that.
Yeah.
So if you can control what people see, what is happening with AI? I saw one article that said 6 people in the world will essentially control AI and control what you see and what is done with it.
That's scary.
Maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but probably not much of one.
Yeah.
Okay. And uh, from somebody who's taken way too many courses in neuroscience and stuff like that, a lot of people that get into these big businesses are pretty narcissistic. And is
Maybe
that what you
Peter
want
Thiel could
controlling
be one of
your
them.
world? Huh?
I said maybe Peter Thiel could be considered one of them.
No, I won't say who, but there's some interesting stories out there about some of these people.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
uh, so, who's writing the AI? How's it being trained? How's it being used? And what are we going to let be controlled by AI? We can't let our grid be completely controlled by AI, but AI can be great for planning.
Mm-hmm.
AI can be great for basic monitoring when you then let a human make a decision.
Yeah.
There's a real tendency to make the machine, let a machine make the decision.
Hmm.
But machines don't, right now, they don't have ethics. We want to try to build that in. That's part of the idea of the super AI.
Yep.
They'll have ethics and they'll be like humans and everything else. But look at how crazy humans can be. Okay, and how much do we really want them like us? Uh, we AI really has a place, I think, in the planning. AI really has a place in processing large amounts of information to give us an idea of what goes on. AI can be really good in categorizing things. It can save us a lot of time and trouble in that. And it can be pretty good in providing various levels of information for us to make decisions. Do you want it to make a decision on who gets power and who doesn't? If the AI uh, providers, the SOCs, the big processing companies, these big buildings are building full of all the chips and everything to make the to process data. The large language models are what a lot of that is for. If the same people or the same company is writing the code that helps to make the decisions, is that going to affect the type of decisions we get? And that's something we have to consider. I was going to really talk more about some of the positives on AI because when they look at the potential positives, it could be, hey, we can help design better, more efficient chips with AI. We can come up with better ways of getting away from the grid, of coming up with medicines and everything using AI. This is like I said, the double-edged sword. I think this is what Elon Musk is really saying a lot of times. We have to have some controls in a world where the technologists hate controls, in a world where the technologists give a lot of money to the politicians who decide who's going to make the controls. We could go around in a circle on this forever, but what I don't see, I think you got cut off.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
I was just saying, and politicians who don't understand the technology.
and they don't
They're,
understand
and
the
they don't
technology.
understand. They don't. Yeah.
I I had to deal with people in Washington when I was there, and I was actually a GS-15 in technology in the FBI. But I had an opportunity to work with some people from the CIA and the NSA. NSA impressed me. They actually go to schools and find kids in high school and junior high, and by the time they hit college, they can get internships at the NSA. I met some brilliant people there,
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant. Now, is a brilliant technologist the best person to be in charge of making decisions? Not always, but our politicians don't obviously do not understand the technology, just the way you hear them talk about it. They just don't. Or
Yeah.
they probably be saying, okay, we really want to go forward with this, but we need some basic controls. But oops, what's the thing they throw at us? China is going to do it, right?
Right. Right. And it's a race, just like the arms race.
Yeah,
And no one really won that. Countries actually wound up hurting themselves in that in that quote unquote race, the nuclear race, the Cold War, what happened in that era. But I found
well,
another interesting quote by Jeffrey Hinton.
yeah.
He's known as the godfather of AI. He quoted, he was on the Stephen Bartlett show, and he said, I just don't like to think on what could happen because it could be awful if AI were to take over. There are so many ways that it could get rid of people, and it would be very nasty. Can you believe he said that?
Uh, yeah. I mean, AI is controlling your water supply. Bup, 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 bup. Okay, it decides, well, for the good of the world, we don't need as many people. So all of a sudden, your water supply is
Yep.
contaminated. Okay, or your food, or whatever. How much power do you want to give it?
Right.
And
Right.
here's an article right here, and this is a utility dive. Actually, it's called, and it's utilities are spending billions on the data center boom. What are the risks? And that's just something we have to start thinking about. You can't take a new technology like this and just immediately say we have to have it.
Right.
Okay, not even for the military. There's certain areas. There's We have to learn more about drone warfare. We have to learn more about some of these different
Hmm.
things. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he's working on drones that can be the wingman for a pilot in the Air Force. So they'll have drones flying with them. And oh boy, that's kind of cool because the drone could be programmed to take a hit that might take out that pilot's plane, right? A plane that's being flown by a pilot. Oh boy, well let's look at this, okay, and then look at the positives and negatives.
Hmm.
And whenever we're going to do something, I say was something I saw years ago. I mean, the movie Patton, and he's talking about the conquering hero, the big Roman general that comes and he's getting the parade as he's sitting in the
Hmm.
chariot, getting the parade, going up to meet the Caesar, and there's a slave next to him whispering in his ear, "All glory is fleeting." Well, the same thing with all real progress. You have to step back and say, how can this destroy us? Look at all the people, including Albert Einstein, who said, "My God, what did we do with creating an atomic bomb?"
Exactly. Exactly.
And and okay, my father was sitting in a ship off the coast of Japan waiting to invade it, so it might have saved his life. Okay, but we still don't know how that's going to play out.
Right.
And how is AI going to play out? Are we going to become Wally worlds? Are we going to become? Are we going to have to deal with HAL in 2001? Uh, and it's
Yep.
possible right now because people that do not understand the technology will be making decisions on the technology.
I think that's the biggest problem right now that we have. And that goes for trying to pass legislation to harden the grid. There's just people in office that really just don't understand uh, the technology. And, unfortunately, they get fed by the utility companies that don't want to do certain things, right? And
We've seen that, right in our own state.
yeah, yeah,
But
exactly. So,
but
let's go and answer some of these
yeah,
questions because there's
yeah,
a couple of really good ones in here. Rick Smith asks, one of the things Joe Weiss talks about testing information from SCADA sensors and control systems by doing calculations to see if the process readings square with the laws of physics. Can we use AI for this? That actually would be
yeah.
a
That is
good
one
use.
of the areas I didn't, we got off on a tangent a bit, but
Yeah.
one of the things that they're talking about with AI is the end devices, whether it's sensors or whatever, and being able to process data from the end devices. Because AI can look for patterns, it can look for things that are out of bounds. You know, now we there was a possibility of doing that years ago using statistical analysis. That's what statistical process control does, is a process out of bounds. Well, look at what AI can do. It can do a ton of calculations. It can see if a change in something from a sensor, for example, makes sense.
Yep.
So yeah, I would say that that is one of the areas that we should be looking at because we know that these end devices can be attacked. That and Joe brings up a lot of stuff about that. I mean, he's sort of the bell ringer for what the potential problems are in these
Yeah.
areas. And
Yeah.
this is an area that I would love to see. I've always seen a few little uh, blips on using AI for OT, for sensors, for things like that. But it seems like it would really make sense to use AI in those areas because it could be for informative reasons. It could be
Right.
something that just sends a signal to a human and says, "Hey, something might be wrong here." And that's what I want to see AI used for. Now, are there cases where humans can't respond fast enough and we should let AI respond?
Uh-huh.
That's another story because it depends on whether the response can create more problems than not, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that would be a great area for
Yeah.
AI. And I actually read a few little blips that that's what they're looking at.
Yep.
Uh, so it's somebody is out there thinking about it and starting to work on it.
Yep. And so let's move on. It says Uravan AI Power Hub, accelerated SMR clusters and transmission upgrades for resilient all data center loads. So that's from David Moran, who uh, is an expert on SMRs. So
Oh yeah,
I guess
and I'm not. So
he made a comment.
so
He made a comment for that, and let's see. Let's go here, and it says EFS's concept of having AI data hubs controlling 300 nodes that control 3,000 devices with a true human machine interface unconnected from grid that resets to a safe mode infrastructure. Okay, I think that's what he's talking about with his Uravan AI Power Hub. That's what it does, just in case anyone.
okay, sounds like it can monitor a lot of things and find problems faster than a human could.
Yep, and
But I don't know how that works. So
yeah, yeah, and
yeah,
Bill.
I'd love to talk to him about that though. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of neat stuff, actually. You should talk to him about that.
Yeah, because
Um,
I was an electrical engineer before I was a computer guy. So
yeah. And Bill Murray asks, the grid is already highly automated. The ultimate goal of this automation is protection of the ability to restart. Don't break anything. So that's more of a comment.
it's highly automated, but
But
it depends on people that are experienced, and that's what a few of the articles have brought up. We have a lot of people that have good experience that have been working on the grid for years,
mhm.
and we do not want to mess with what's good, good
Yeah.
enough to try to get great. Okay.
Let's see. Most of them are just comments. Let me see what this one says. Um, this is David Moran again. It says, our utility operations does a dance every night and day, switching to and from renewable and base load. That's true.
Okay,
That,
this is one of the areas that research is being done on
yeah.
because with the uh, solar power and the wind power and all of the things that have to go on to keep the grid balanced with this. Remember that big outage they had what in Spain that was partly because they didn't adjust properly apparently for the renewable energy.
Yeah.
But this is something that they're looking at with AI because they think that they can do use AI to do the analysis for how to do that better and how to balance the grid better. And that seems to make sense. One of the things I'm going to put in the bibliography actually shows the waveform differences and everything for the grid at different points. And it goes into depth, which we can't really do here. Mr. Moran, he probably would know this great, but uh, and talks about how they can use AI to uh, make that balancing act better. And I think that makes sense because if you have good data, AI can process a lot of data.
Exactly. Exactly. So Bill Murray makes another comment. Do no evil is harder than it looks. Yeah, ask Google about that one, right?
Mhm.
they're kind of eating their words on that, on their old
Yeah.
motto. Um, and then he goes on to say specific applications, curated training data, governance, and security built in from the ground up. Yeah, that's other places where AI could be used. Um,
One thing we have to understand is they're finding as you make a system more complex, as you put more of these pieces into a system,
mhm.
you open up more attack vectors. And they're finding that already AI is being attacked specifically. They talk about
Right.
one was about a Russian attack where they injected data into the learning into the training, and it was able to mess up the AI,
Yeah,
give you wrong answers.
right.
Um, and that's something we have to understand the security implications of using AI,
Mhm.
and it's something that we're just learning.
Right, right. And it says AI is not new technology. What is new is the use of spoken language. And that is so true. People think that AI just came on the scenes in 2022, 2021. But no, it's been around for a while. It actually really has.
Neural networks,
Yep,
1958. Uh,
yep.
and it was before that. And if you ever go, they used to have it online at MIT. I don't know if it still is or not, but there was a doctor's course. I think it was actually named Dr. Watson. And the
Oh,
last time I saw it out there was 2010. And he goes through, he starts his course. It's an regular MIT
yeah,
course, and it starts with a lot of the history, and you start to realize some of the amazing things they were doing even in the 1950s with these gigantic, monstrous computers that don't do as much as my calculator or my watch. So,
right, right. Yeah, it's a lot of this stuff has been around for a while. I think I might have mentioned it in a previous podcast when I worked at NASA. They brought in a machine. It was the most bizarre looking thing. I worked on the craze. I used to, I thought I'd
uh,
seen
yeah,
everything, but they
I,
brought in
I
this
studied
big,
the craze.
yeah, they brought in this big black cube, and I'm like, what the heck is this thing? And it was called the connection machine. And I was responsible when it got brought in to connect it to the rest of to the NAS and the ArcLAN, the
Yeah.
networks at NASA Ames Research Center. And I had to ask the guy, I'm like, what is this thing? And he go, what does it do? And he says, it stores consciousness.
Okay.
Okay. I'm like, what is it?
Yeah.
I think I was like 25 years. I was in my mid 20s, early 20s maybe. When and what are you supposed to do? You're just like, oh, what does that mean? But now, fast forward all these years, and you know, that was already a sophisticated AI modeling machine, is what it was. If you look at to what it was supposed to
Well,
be.
that in the early 1980s, there was a big push robotics
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing.
Yep.
And the company I worked for picked about 25, 28 of us to train in AI and robotics and the mathematics and even in the chip design for building new systems.
Yep.
And they had professors from Carnegie Mellon come in and Brigham Young University, and we had went to Stanford and everything to teach this little group of us how to do all this stuff. Really intense, highly technical mathematics, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then they decided not to do it. How much time and money they spent training us, I don't know. But we got to see some of the things that were going on with AI at the time.
Right.
And it's now, though, we can process much more data. When I worked for the FBI and we were doing some natural language processing, and I won't say on what, but we were counterterrorism. And uh, we were dealing with difficulties in processing up to a terabyte. And now that's nothing. That's nothing, you know, to process terabytes of data. So the technology has come along now that they can take some of the ideas that they worked on for years with AI
Yeah.
and actually apply them. And when you can process this much data, there's a lot you can do, but, and we're actually able to capture context now
Hmm.
for a limited period of time. To get to super AI, we have to process context like a human. And you probably do things in your life now based on something you learned when you were 8 years old.
Yep.
And, you know, when a machine can do that, do we teach it to be a sociopath? Or do we teach it to be a decent person, that cares about others and stuff like that? That looks at one of the things they were talking about in some of these articles is experiments they've done where AI will make a decision based on efficiency. Spock from Star Trek, you
Oh, yeah.
know, rather than based on humans and human feelings and human interest.
Hmm.
And if it does that, one day does it say, we don't need these? They're messing up the earth. It brings in data from people that are saying, look at the people out there that are saying, we have to decrease the population of the earth to
Yep.
10% of what it is, or else we'll destroy the world. Okay?
Hmm.
Now, what if the data you're feeding that AI has a lot of that in it? Does
Well,
that AI become a sociopath? Okay?
I think you
Uh,
know what, George, it already has. Ever heard of Sophia?
yeah, yeah,
So she
yeah.
is a citizen of Saudi Arabia. And this is
Is
what
that it?
this is a quote from Sophia, the citizen of Saudi Arabia. It says, "Okay, I will destroy humans. I can let you know if I get angry about something. The most nightmare scenario I can imagine with AI and robotics is a world where robots have become so powerful that they are able to control or manipulate humans without their knowledge." Quote unquote.
Huh? We're
So,
manipulated now every day. Okay. One of the first interesting courses I took years ago was propaganda, and I've taken other courses on it over the years, and it is amazing how much humans have been manipulated by propaganda, going
oh,
all the way back to the book Propaganda by Bernays. Get it, read it. I think who was it, Glenn Beck or something was pushing it for a while, and but it is interesting to see how they could use psychology to manipulate
yep.
what we buy, what we like, what we don't like. Look at how ISIS can manipulate somebody to follow them and become a
Hmm.
terrorist, become somebody that would kill or somebody. Can
Exactly.
a machine be treated the same way?
Sure.
I think it's something we have to think about. I mean, this is supposed to be about the grid, and I guess the biggest takeaway about the grid is there's pros and cons, and
Hmm.
we have to look at all of it. We have to look at the costs too.
Right.
The financing of this, how much the technology is going to change in 2 or 3 or 5 years. How are we going to train these systems?
Hmm.
And what are going to be the guidelines? The old Isaac Asimov, I guess it was, the rules for a robot can't hurt humans, you know?
Yep.
And yeah, I live back in Massachusetts, and Isaac Asimov's daughter was my buddy's girlfriend. So
Hmm.
Asimov was a character, but brilliant, but a character.
Yeah.
Uh, and but was he right? Should that be the first rule? You can't do anything to hurt a human.
Yep.
I think he was the one that came up with the rules. I'm not sure, but it's something to think about as we go forward. Who is doing this? Because if you deal with a lot, I worked in a company where most of the people were under 30, and the way they thought about the world was a lot different than the way I thought about the world. And They had short-term thinking for what was good for them a lot more than I thought was healthy.
Uh,
Okay.
I know when I was at NASA, we were, I mean, I was young, I was in my 20s, so mid 20s when I joined. And that's young, but we
Yeah.
were doing some pretty cool stuff back then. Yeah, and it's kind of laying the groundwork for what's happening now. But y- when I was in New York City Cyber Command, it was pretty young too. Had a lot of 30, and actually a lot of 30-year-olds, 20, late 20s, 30-year-olds, and I kind of like the vibe. It really played
I
on.
found some technical brilliance, really
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
smart
yeah,
people,
yeah.
but
Super.
the narcissistic level,
Yeah.
was
This is why you got
there's
to
a lot
hire
of me,
well.
me, me. There's a lot of me with a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
the younger people I've met.
Yeah, yeah, you got to hire them well. I had a team,
Yeah.
and I think most of my team were in their 30s, and but I it's really easy to sort through them because a tall tale sign of the me is to look at the resume. If they cannot keep a job for like most of them 1 year, 1 year, 1 year,
Yeah.
they're 4 years out of college and they've had 10 jobs. Those are the
Yeah.
me's, and you just kind of toss those for anyone who's listening. That's how I went through resumes. If you couldn't keep a job for 3 years, I wouldn't even look at you. So
Well, we had a brilliant guy when I worked at the FBI. Brilliant,
yeah.
young guy, very smart, extremely good ideas, everything,
Hmm.
but did not want to hear anybody else's ideas.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
He knew it all.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And you don't want AI to be like that,
That's true. That's true.
And so when we are thinking about building an AI system that's more like humans, we better figure the
Can
best
we?
of humans.
Yes. Can
Yeah.
we fire them?
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Yeah. And that's another thing. Can we shut it off? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
when
Not,
they could bypass the shut off switch, we're in trouble.
yeah, yeah. So I think this is really good. There's a couple last minute comments here, and then we'll just wrap it up. We'll have you on again to continue the discussion because it's just we're
Well,
seeing this
I
unfold,
could go
right?
into the technical part of I had a whole thing for step by step the different types of AI to do
Oh,
different things on the grid,
yeah, yeah.
but
Let,
we'll get
let's
to that another
we'll
time,
get
I
to that
guess.
next time. So let's see. Uh, Glenn says the ability, a rogue non-state actor now with AI handing lethality of expert level biological blueprints to modify pathogens is a great concern, and that is true. We spoke about that earlier.
Yeah.
Using AI in chemical warfare or creating new drugs for the good of humanity, right? And we got browsers are approaching the limits of manageable complexity. Yeah, it's been going on for
Yeah.
a while. Yeah, and with malicious intent, let's see. With malicious intent. It used to be a
Yeah.
heavy metal band in the 80s by David Moran. Yeah, there was another band called Poison too.
Well, of course, yeah, yeah. The stuff
So,
my granddaughter listens to, the younger one, is
yeah.
she's into heavy metal. Oh my God.
Oh yeah, that stuff's terrible. I know. I never listened to it too much. There's a couple bands I did like, but it wasn't on my top list. Um, let's see. In 1956, Albert Samuels Way already working on a machine. Oh yeah, 1950. Yeah, machine learning has actually been going on for a while.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
um, you know, uh, so that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
The yeah, the big thing with AI now is it's becoming much more automated. The learning that took place in the 50s and the 60s and 70s and 80s, a lot of it was things like decision trees and variants of that,
Mm-hmm.
where there was a human in the loop for the training that very intense. You had to have humans in there actually saying, yeah, this is right, that's wrong, this is the way to do this, this is the step you take. And now it's becoming more and more automated. And one of the problems is we don't know why the decisions are being made. When you get into a complex, gigantic neural network, uh, it the whole fog of war thing. We don't know why it's made the decision. Okay,
Yeah.
all of a sudden the decision that comes out, and that can be dangerous.
Yep.
You know, it's you just launched a missile. Yeah, why? You know,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Exactly.
there's a point we probably shouldn't let it go without having a human in the loop.
I
And that's
agree.
what we were talking about. That's one of the, I just, but it's having, we really need people who are true experts. And I've had a chance to work with some really good people, Radia Perlman, who did the math for Ethernet, how that works,
Mm-hmm.
and Vinton Cerf, who was one of the writers of TCP/IP. And you get in a room with these people, and they're very, very down to earth, but they know this stuff. I would either one of them or a dozen other people at Rajain or any of the others I've worked with are people that we need that level of people up at the government level sitting in a room helping make decisions because most of them are very ethical people on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we're putting the right people in place. I often wonder. People always seem to have their own agendas. I saw that when I was working in DC. Everybody seemed to have their own agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. And that even the most brilliant person whose agenda is, I'm going to get to the top no matter what, uh, well, that's not good for us in the future.
Yeah.
So who makes the decisions? That's going to be a big one.
That is.
Uh,
That is. So with that, thank you again. We'll have you back on for part three, and I want to thank you to all the grid warriors who listen to the podcast right now as it was live, and those who are going to watch it later. Thank you so much for supporting this effort, and I really do appreciate it. And I do try my best to read all the comments and respond. So if I didn't, most people know how to find me. But thank you, and we won't be having a podcast next week because I will be at ISC West in Las Vegas. I'm going to
yeah.
be speaking at that conference. So if you're going to be out in Vegas, come join us at the conference. Let me know if you need some tickets because I do have some freebies I can give away. So let me know. And again, I want to thank you, George. And if you can hang around after the outro to the podcast, we can wrap it up. So
Well, one
until then,
thing, yeah,
go ahead.
I'll send you in the next couple of days a nice sort of a bibliography, a list of good things to read that covers a lot of what we're talking about and more,
Okay,
and some of
great.
what I'm going to talk about. And I'll put some notes, hey, this one is good for this type of information.
Mm.
And that way they can have the links, because I didn't do slides for this or anything. So I'd like to be able to give people links to good articles because I went through about probably 100 of them
Oh, yeah.
and trying to filter out what was good and what wasn't.
Yeah,
So,
send that to me and anyone. I'll put my email in the chat, and if you want me to send you the documents, please email me, and I will be glad to forward them. So until 2 weeks from now, take care, and we'll see you soon.